Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
On today's show, the family of the man who fell overboard on a P&O cruise off Sydney has alleged he was lured onto the ship to gamble. Plus, the former military lawyer who unearthed alleged Australian war crimes in Afghanistan was sentenced today. I'll ask an expert what that means for future whistleblowers. Heard of the GameStop's saga? Well, there was a new twist overnight, and you don't want to miss that one. And I'll tell you about Kevin Costner's bombshell accusations about his hit show Yellowstone. And I'll leave you today with a story about an AFL player who's been forced to retire before even playing a game. In our top story today, the man who fell overboard on a cruise ship off Sydney.
A frantic search and rescue operation has been launched off the coast of Sydney after reports a cruise ship passenger fell overboard early on Monday morning.
The man who fell overboard on a P&O cruise has been identified as 50-year-old Sydney man Shane Dixon. And now the family has broken its silence, claiming the cruise company lured the man to spend big with high roller incentives. A family holiday turned into a nightmare when Dixon fell overboard on the P&O cruise ship Pacific Adventure off Sydney Heads. The father of three had been on a 3-day Elvis-themed cruise with his family, including his mother Sue, who'd saved up to book the trip as a holiday for the pair. Once on board, Dixon found himself caught in a web of high roller incentives, reportedly accruing a significant debt of $4,000 while on the ship. Described as a hard-working truck driver, Shane's financial struggles and personal losses weighed heavily on him as he sought a temporary escape on the cruise. Gambling laws in Australia have strict governance over advertising and promotions. However, cruise ships can dodge those regulations while in international waters. And the family claims Dixon spent $5,000 in the P&O ship's casino, while staff treated him to free drinks, gave him play vouchers, and even issued him a ticket to a future cruise. He borrowed $5,000 from his mother to repay the debt before accruing an additional $4,000 debt with the casino. A P&O spokesperson said it'd be inappropriate to comment on the tragic death of a guest while a coroner's investigation is carried out. If you're struggling with a gambling addiction or face a crisis in your life, remember you can always call Lifeline on 131114.
I don't accept that it was my job was to cover up crimes, but I would say I just actually did the job I was trained to do.
You just heard David McBride, a former military lawyer who leaked classified documents that revealed allegations Australian soldiers committed war crimes in Afghanistan. Today, McBride was sentenced to spend at least 2 years and 3 months behind bars. Here to help us understand what this all means is Associate Professor at the University of Queensland School of Law, Rebecca Ananian-Welsh. Rebecca, thanks for joining me.
No worries. It's a pleasure.
And so today's sentencing was the end of a long and winding journey for David McBride. Can you take us through what happened in this case and what he was originally charged with?
So David McBride, as you said, spent about 18 months collating classified documents when he was a defence lawyer. So he was a military lawyer, he had access to everything, and he realised that there were potential war crimes being committed by Australian soldiers in Afghanistan. He tried to do something about this internally. He tried to follow the proper channels within the Defence Department. The police felt like this was getting nowhere and that his career was maybe getting nowhere at the same time. And so he decided to give the documents to journalists. So the only reason that we know or got to know years ago that there were potential war crimes being committed by Australian soldiers was because of David McBride, because he spoke out. He was charged because he'd done something wrong. You're not allowed to leak classified documents to journalists, but he should have been able to rely on whistleblower protection laws. It's a complicated, as you said, winding story from that point with years in court, but eventually strategic decisions by the Defence Department, by the government lawyers, meant that he couldn't rely on whistleblower protections. The evidence he needed to do that was secret. He couldn't get access to it. So that avenue was cut off. And without being able to rely on whistleblower protection laws, he had committed offences. He'd shared classified documents. He pleaded guilty, and that's what he was sentenced for today.
And so even though as a result of his leak, there was a subsequent inquiry that did actually find credible information about war crimes allegedly committed by the Australian military in Afghanistan, that didn't vindicate him or really play a part in this criminal case.
No. Look, once his whistleblower case was scuttled, I guess the lawyers and the civil rights advocates were waiting to see whether the judge might exercise some sort of leniency here. What David McBride revealed were really credible evidence of some really bad stuff that was important for us all to know. What's happened today is that the judge has said what I'm giving more weight to isn't the public interest in finding out, it's the fact that he did things he knew were wrong. He shared secret documents, and that's not okay. And he did it secretively, and he gave it to journalists. So it sends a really bad message to people who might be thinking of calling out wrongdoing that they can see.
Yeah, the message, I think, from this verdict and sentencing is pretty clear. But in terms of legal precedent, you talk about public interest and you've mentioned whistleblower protections. What does this guilty verdict for McBride mean in terms of those protections?
The protections themselves, so there are problems with whistleblower laws, and myself and other kind of academics and law nerds will pick over them, but the protections are there and they're relatively robust. We have decent protections. If you are calling out wrongdoing, then there are laws that should protect you from any kind of repercussion, be that losing your job or a criminal offence. What happened with McBride is that decisions made along the way were throwing up every obstacle possible to him even trying to rely on those laws. So it wasn't so much a problem with the laws, but this policy by government to not even let him try to establish that he was a whistleblower in court. So that says even if you are a whistleblower, we will do everything that we can to prosecute you and make sure you're punished for revealing secrets. That's really disturbing.
Yeah, it does seem as though the government moved the goalposts a little bit when it comes to the McBride case. And now, I guess, will he appeal? Is that an option?
I believe he is intending to appeal. And when you're talking about things like the public interest and the interests of democracy and transparency versus national security, I think what we're seeing is that that's a really hard balance and it could go any way. So these are more policy kind of decisions than legal ones, but the court is having to make a call. What we were fighting for, what I think should have happened here, is for the government to step in a lot earlier and say, we don't prosecute whistleblowers, which is what they did for Bernard Collaery, and now recently saying with Assange, we're not going to support the prosecution of whistleblowers. We're going to kind of accept they've done something good for democracy, protect them, because what they revealed was actually worse than what they did.
Yeah, I think there's a very good argument for that being the case. From the University of Queensland School of Law, Associate Professor Rebecca Ananian-Welsh, thanks for joining us and sharing these insights on the Nightly Five.
Thanks.
Surprise! GameStop's up about 5x from when I uploaded those videos over the summer, so that's great to see. When you have a thesis and by and large it unfolds as you hope that it could.
That's a blast from the past, but guess what? Roaring Kitty is back. For those who came in late, Roaring Kitty, aka Keith Gill, is the day trader who became an online sensation in 2021 when he led the meme stock revolution that took the share price of the failing US gaming company GameStop to the moon. That bizarre moment in history almost broke Wall Street, cost hedge funders billions of dollars, and was turned into an excellent Netflix doco, Eat the Rich, the GameStop saga. It also became a movie starring Paul Dano and Pete Davidson. Well, after years out of the limelight, Roaring Kitty has resurfaced online overnight in the US with a cryptic image showing a video gamer in a chair leaning forward as if to indicate he's taking the game seriously. That was enough to spark a buying frenzy among amateur traders. Shares of GameStop surged again as much as 110% higher with a slew of trading halts for volatility. During 2021's mania, GameStop shares hit an all-time high of of $120 in the summer of 2022. But as interest from individual investors eventually faded, the stock collapsed again and GameStop hit a 3-year low of $9.95 just last month. But just as in the original meme stock frenzy, the jaw-dropping rally in GameStop on Monday caused losses among short sellers to approach $1 billion. Can't wait to see where this story goes next.
The man said if you didn't leave, we'd bury you here. And you didn't leave. We keep our word in this valley.
Fine, we'll leave.
No, it's too late for that.
I said we'll leave.
I don't want you to leave. I want you to dig.
Kevin Costner, how good is that? Yellowstone is one of the most popular shows on TV, winning a ton of awards. So why is its legendary star Kevin Costner in a very public war of words with the show's creator? Here to help us answer that is our guru of the screen, culture editor Wenley Ma. Okay, Wenley, before we get into this, give us a brief description of what Yellowstone actually is for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Yellowstone is this very soapy primetime drama about the Dutton family who own a massive, massive ranch. And it's really about, I guess, will do anything to keep any threats to their holdings at bay. Like, it's very dynasty. It's quite Dallasy. I've seen it compared to Succession. I personally don't agree with that because I think it's not as complex as some of those other shows, but it's got great production values. It's got a starry cast, and it's hugely popular.
It is hugely popular. So what is the deal with this beef between Kevin Costner and the show's creator and writer, Taylor Sheridan?
Yeah, I mean, what you've essentially got is two men who are both really powerful, who are both really quite used to getting their own way, not being able to sort of come to terms on what is actually a scheduling issue. So Kevin Costner has been on the show for 4 seasons, and then all of a sudden there's been this huge delay to the 5th season, and you started to get these reports about 18 months ago that there's all this behind-the-scenes drama, that Kevin Costner was being difficult, he wasn't giving them the time they needed to film. A lot of these came from unnamed sources that were close to Taylor Sheridan's camp or from the studio, which is Paramount, saying that, he only gave them a week, which is not enough to sort of do justice to that character. And so we've been hearing this conversation, this narrative for a while, and Kevin Costner has piped up every now and then, but not saying much. Last year he threatened to maybe sue them for contract breaches, but this week he's given this explosive interview where he says that basically everyone else is lying, and what's really happened, he claims, is that the scripts are not being done, that there are no scripts ready to go when they said they would be ready to go. He's carved out time to shoot this thing, and then the time comes around and there's nothing to actually shoot. And what's complicating it is that Kevin Costner has for years been working on this really big, ambitious Western movie, actually a 4-part movie. Is it even a movie when it's 4 parts? I think that's another question, called Horizon, and he's been very keen to sort of get that going. So what he said is, I put aside all this time for Yellowstone, and then we can't do it, and I have to keep pushing my movie back, and enough was enough. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to go off and make my movie because you told me to show up at this time and there is nothing ready to go.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to follow the drama around this drama. And I don't know about you, but don't you think that, the fact that Kevin Costner has even got this huge movie project is in no small part because his career has been revitalised by Yellowstone?
I totally agree with that. And especially Horizon being a Western, being kind of this cowboys thing, is very much, I think, financed because people want to see him continue to play that kind of archetype. Now, Kevin Costner has actually put up a lot of his own money into the project, and it is his baby. I mean, he'd won an Oscar directing Dances with the Wolves almost 30 years ago, so there's no doubt he knows how to work his way behind a camera. But I think it does get lost in his argument that he might not be making Horizon if it wasn't for Yellowstone in the first place. And Horizon is now actually due to premiere next week at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see how that goes. Where do you think all this Yellowstone stuff goes next?
They've already confirmed that the upcoming episodes, of which is the second half of season 5, will be the finale to Yellowstone. It doesn't look like Kevin Costner will be in it. It doesn't seem like he's going to be filming anything for it, has filmed anything for it. And then, of course, after that, they are in development on a sequel series. So they are negotiating with the other actors who are on Yellowstone, like Kelly Riley, Wes Bentley, Cole Hauser, to reprise those roles potentially. And they've been circling Matthew McConaughey for a lead role, but nothing's been signed.
Yeah, very interesting. It looks like Kevin Costner is riding into the sunset and Taylor Sheridan is saying, don't let the door hit your horse on the way out. Culture editor from The Nightly, Wenley Ma, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
To O'Driscoll, who does the unselfish thing, plays on by hand, and they can waltz into the open goal.
Western Bulldogs draftee Aidan O'Driscoll's AFL career has ended before he even played a game, with the youngster forced into premature retirement through concussion. O'Driscoll is the younger brother of Fremantle AFL forward Nathan O'Driscoll and Dockers AFLW star defender Emma O'Driscoll, and was drafted to the Bulldogs at pick number 55 in last year's draft. But after suffering a significant head injury in pre-season, O'Driscoll, who's only 18 and never played a game for the Bulldogs, confirmed today he had retired on medical grounds. He's the third player after Melbourne midfielder Angus Brayshaw and Collingwood defender Nathan Murphy to be forced into retirement through concussion this season alone. O'Driscoll's retirement comes amid a cloud over the playing future of Bulldogs stalwart Tom Liberatore. The Bulldogs vice-captain is sidelined indefinitely after 2 separate concussions this season, with no timeline on his return to play. Bulldogs coach Luke Beveridge indicated Liberatore could be put forward for independent assessment, but said it hasn't been confirmed yet. What has been confirmed, though, is contact sports in this country face a huge battle when it comes to dealing with the impact of brain injuries. And that, folks, is today's show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join me tomorrow on The Nightly 5.
The Nightly 5 podcast is brought to you by 7 West Media. For all these stories and more, head to thenightly.com.au, helping you get in front of tomorrow.